I'm Diana, 32, a marketing manager at a mid-sized company in Boston. Growing up, I always felt like the understudy in my parents' eyes while my younger sister Amanda took center stage. But nothing prepared me for that fateful family meeting last spring when my parents looked me straight in the eyes and casually announced, "Diana will pay for everything." The weight of their words crushed me like an avalanche. Before I tell you how I walked away from my family's manipulation, let me know where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe to support stories of breaking free from toxic family dynamics. I grew up in a typical brick colonial in a middle-class neighborhood in Lexington, Massachusetts. On the surface, we looked like the picture-perfect American family: mom, dad, two daughters, and a golden retriever named Sunny. But beneath that facade lay a complicated dynamic that I didn't fully understand until I was much older. My parents, Margaret and Robert Thompson, had very different approaches to raising my sister and me. With me, their firstborn, they were strict disciplinarians. Curfews were non-negotiable, grades below A- warranted serious discussions, and privileges were earned through chores and responsibility. I grew up believing this was normal parenting, setting high expectations to prepare your child for the world. Then came Amanda, 5 years my junior. From the moment she arrived, it seemed the rulebook was rewritten. Her tantrums were met with soothing words rather than timeouts. Her mediocre report cards received praise for trying her best. Her responsibilities around the house somehow always became mine because Diana is so much better at it, or Diana doesn't mind helping out. By the time I reached high school, the pattern was firmly established. I remember my junior year when I asked my parents for $85 to cover my SAT registration. Dad frowned, gave me a lecture about responsibility, and suggested I pick up extra babysitting jobs to earn it. That same month, they surprised Amanda with a new bike just because, despite the fact she rarely used the perfectly good one in our garage. College applications arrived, and I knew better than to expect much help. I applied for every scholarship I could find, worked weekends at the local diner, and took out modest student loans. I was accepted to Northeastern University and graduated with a degree in marketing and business administration. Throughout those 4 years, I worked part-time jobs, lived in cramped housing with 4 roommates, and ate more ramen than I care to remember. Amanda's college journey looked dramatically different. My parents covered her application fees to 7 universities without question. They paid her full tuition at Tufts, bought her a MacBook Pro for schoolwork, and provided her with a generous monthly allowance. Despite these advantages, Amanda dropped out after 3 semesters, claiming college wasn't the right fit. 6 months later, she enrolled at Boston University, only to leave again after a year. Meanwhile, I was building my career from the ground up. My first job after college was as a marketing assistant at Reynolds Media Group. The pay was barely enough to cover my small apartment and student loan payments, but I worked overtime, volunteered for every project, and slowly began climbing the ladder. Promotions came through dedication rather than connections: junior marketing coordinator, marketing specialist, senior marketing specialist, and finally, after 8 years of consistent effort, marketing manager. Each milestone in my career came with a mixture of pride and a strange hollowness. When I called home to share news of promotions, my parents' responses were always tepid. "That's nice, dear," my mother would say before quickly changing the subject to Amanda's latest adventure or challenge. And there were many challenges. Amanda's pattern of starting things with enthusiasm and abandoning them when they required sustained effort continued into adulthood. She cycled through jobs in retail, hospitality, administrative work, and even a brief stint in real estate. None lasted more than 8 months. Each departure came with a different excuse: toxic work environment, unfair management, or not feeling fulfilled. After each job loss, my parents would step in with financial support to keep her afloat. At family gatherings, I'd hear snippets about how they helped Amanda with her rent, just until she gets back on her feet, or paid off her credit card, just this once. These conversations would mysteriously halt whenever I entered the room, as if acknowledging their financial support of Amanda in front of me was taboo. Despite earning a good salary, I lived modestly. My apartment in Somerville was small but comfortable, furnished with a mix of secondhand finds and affordable basics. I drove a reliable Honda Civic that I planned to keep until it couldn't run anymore. My indulgences were few: a monthly dinner at a nice restaurant, occasional concert tickets, and an annual vacation, usually a road trip or budget-friendly flight to visit college friends scattered across the country. My financial priorities focused on building security, maxing out my 401k, creating an emergency fund, and saving for a down payment on a condo. By 32, I had managed to save nearly $65,000 toward homeownership while remaining debt-free apart from the final $12,000 of my student loans. Last February, I received news that validated years of hard work, a promotion to senior marketing manager with a significant salary increase. For the first time, I would be earning six figures. The promotion came with additional responsibilities, including managing a team of 5 and overseeing our company's digital marketing strategy overhaul. I was ecstatic but also humbled by the trust my company placed in me. I shared the news with my close friend Rachel and celebrated with a nice bottle of wine and takeout from our favorite Thai restaurant. I deliberately chose not to tell my family immediately, wanting to enjoy the achievement without it being diminished or redirected to concerns about Amanda. Somehow, though, news traveled through the family grapevine. My cousin Taylor, who worked at a partner company, had heard about my promotion and innocently mentioned it to my aunt, who then called my mother. 3 days after my promotion, I received an unusually enthusiastic call from my mother congratulating me. Her interest in the details of my new role felt foreign and slightly unsettling. Little did I know that this sudden interest in my financial situation would soon reveal its true purpose. The text from my mother came on a Wednesday afternoon, while I was in the middle of a strategy meeting with my team. I didn't see it until 2 hours later when I finally had a break. "Diana, we need to have a family meeting this Saturday at 5. It's important everyone is there. Dad and I are cooking dinner. Please come." My stomach tightened immediately. In our family, important meetings were rare and usually meant something was wrong. My first thought was that someone was sick, perhaps Dad's heart condition had worsened, or Mom had received a troubling diagnosis. I quickly texted back confirming I would be there, then spent the rest of my workday distracted with worry. Saturday arrived with unseasonably warm spring weather. I drove the familiar route to my parents' house in Lexington, rehearsing responses to various scenarios. If someone was ill, I would offer help with medical appointments or research treatment options. If they wanted to discuss selling the family home, I would support whatever decision made them comfortable in retirement. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed Amanda's blue Volkswagen already parked near the garage. Next to it was my Uncle Peter's SUV, my mother's brother, who lived about an hour away in New Hampshire. His presence added to my concern. Why would they need Uncle Peter at a family meeting? The front door opened before I could ring the bell. My mother stood there with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Diana, you're here. Come in, come in. Everyone's in the living room." I stepped into the house and immediately noticed changes since my last visit a month ago. There was a new leather sectional sofa in the living room that looked expensive, replacing the well-worn fabric couch that had been there for years. An impressive flat-screen TV now dominated the wall, where a modest older model had been. For parents who frequently mentioned being careful with retirement savings, these purchases seemed oddly lavish. In the living room, Dad sat in his recliner, looking uncomfortable. Amanda perched on the edge of the new sofa, her expression brightening artificially when she saw me. Uncle Peter nodded from his position by the fireplace. "Hey, big sis." Amanda bounced up to hug me with unusual enthusiasm. "Love that blouse on you. Is it new? You always have such great taste." Her compliment caught me off guard. Amanda rarely noticed what I wore, let alone commented positively on it. Her eyes darted to our parents as if seeking approval for her friendly overture. "Thanks," I said cautiously. "It's actually been in my closet for a while." "Well, it looks amazing on you. Doesn't she look great, Mom? So professional and successful." Mom nodded quickly. "Yes, very nice. Diana, would you like some iced tea? I made your favorite with the mint from the garden." The excessive niceness was becoming increasingly suspicious. I accepted the tea and sat in an armchair, noticing how everyone seemed to avoid direct eye contact. "So," I ventured, "is everyone okay? Your message sounded urgent, Mom." "Oh, we're all fine health-wise," Mom replied quickly. "We'll discuss everything after dinner. I made your favorite pot roast." The conversation before dinner was strained. Dad talked about his golf game more animatedly than usual. Mom kept disappearing to the kitchen, refusing help when I offered. Amanda showed unusual interest in my work, asking detailed questions about my promotion and new responsibilities. "So, what kind of salary bump comes with a senior position like that?" she asked while helping Mom bring dishes to the table. I noticed Mom and Dad exchange glances. "Amanda," Mom interrupted, "let's not talk business at dinner. Diana, would you like more potatoes?" Throughout the meal, I caught snippets of what seemed like a previously rehearsed conversation. References to the situation and our options dropped quickly when they realized I was listening. At one point, Amanda whispered something to Mom, who patted her hand reassuringly and said, "We'll sort it all out." Uncle Peter remained mostly silent, studying his plate with focused interest whenever the conversation took these mysterious turns. His presence still puzzled me. As my mother's only sibling, he sometimes mediated family disagreements, but we hadn't had any conflicts requiring mediation recently, at least none that involved me. After dessert, an elaborate tiramisu that Mom had never made before, Dad cleared his throat and announced, "Let's move to the living room. We have family matters to discuss." My anxiety, which had been building all evening, peaked. The formality of the announcement and the nervous glances exchanged confirmed this wasn't a casual family gathering. Something significant was happening, and somehow, I suspected it involved me. As we settled into the living room, the atmosphere grew heavy with anticipation. Dad positioned himself in his recliner, Mom sat next to Amanda on the sofa, and Uncle Peter took a chair slightly removed from our circle, as if designating himself an observer rather than participant. I sat alone in the armchair opposite everyone, increasingly feeling like this was less a family meeting and more like a tribunal. The physical arrangement wasn't lost on me, them versus me. Dad fiddled with his reading glasses, a nervous habit I recognized from childhood confrontations. Mom smoothed the fabric of her pants repeatedly. Amanda kept her eyes down, picking at her nail polish. Uncle Peter sighed and checked his watch. The silence stretched uncomfortably until I finally broke it. "Okay, what's going on? You're all acting strange, and honestly, it's freaking me out a little." Dad looked at Mom, who nodded slightly as if giving permission to proceed. Whatever was coming, they had clearly coordinated their approach beforehand, and that realization sent a chill through me. Dad cleared his throat for what seemed like the 100th time that evening. He removed his glasses, polished them with the edge of his shirt, and placed them back on with deliberate slowness. These stalling tactics only heightened my anxiety. "Diana," he finally began, his voice carrying the formal tone he reserved for serious matters, "we've called this family meeting to discuss a situation that affects all of us. It's about financial matters." My mind raced. Were my parents in trouble? Had their retirement investments collapsed? Was the house underwater? Their recent purchases suddenly seemed even more confusing if they were facing financial difficulties. Dad continued, "Your sister's been going through a tough time lately." He gestured toward Amanda, who managed to produce a convincing look of distress. "She's had some financial setbacks that have spiraled beyond her control." Amanda sniffled on cue, and Mom immediately put an arm around her shoulders. "What kind of setbacks?" I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral despite the growing suspicion in my gut. Dad looked uncomfortable, but pressed on. "Amanda started a small online boutique last year. You remember, she was selling those handmade jewelry pieces and imported scarves." I nodded. The boutique had been an Instagram shop that, from what I'd gathered, consisted mostly of items Amanda purchased from overseas websites and marked up significantly. She had talked about it enthusiastically for about 2 months before I stopped hearing updates. "Well," Dad continued, "she invested quite a bit in inventory that didn't sell as expected. And there were website costs, marketing expenses, business licenses. And I had to rent that small office space in Cambridge, Amanda interjected. For the business image, you know? My apartment wasn't professional enough for vendor meetings. I bit my tongue, remembering how my first business cards had been designed and printed at the local copy shop for $30 and how my office had been a corner desk in my bedroom for years. Mom jumped in, her voice wavering with emotion. Amanda has been so depressed about the business failure. She tried so hard, Diana. She really did. It's affected her health. She can barely sleep from the stress. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, genuinely meaning it despite my reservations. But I'm still not clear on why this required a family meeting with Uncle Peter present. Uncle Peter shifted uncomfortably in his chair, but remained silent.
Dad took a deep breath.
The business wasn't the only issue. There were some other expenses that compounded the problem. What Dad's trying to say, Amanda cut in, apparently tired of the slow revelation, is that I'm in debt. Pretty serious debt. She at least had the decency to look embarrassed. How serious? I asked. The room fell silent. Mom and Dad exchanged another meaningful look. $78,000, Dad finally admitted. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. $78,000? How is that even possible? Amanda began ticking off sources on her fingers. There's about $24,000 in credit card debt spread across 3 cards. Then about $15,000 for the business loan. I have a personal loan for $18,000 that I took to consolidate some earlier debts but then had new expenses. The rest is a mix of medical bills from when I didn't have insurance last year, back rent on the apartment, and money I borrowed from friends. I sat in stunned silence, trying to process the magnitude of her financial disaster. $78,000 was more than my annual salary had been until very recently. It represented years of work and sacrifice. Amanda made some mistakes, Mom said defensively. But who hasn't? She's young and still figuring things out. She's 27, I pointed out. Not exactly a teenager. Dad frowned at my comment. The point is, she's in trouble and needs help. We're family, and family helps each other through difficult times. Okay, I said slowly, so you're telling me about this because? Mom leaned forward, her eyes suddenly intense. We've already done everything we can, Diana. We helped Amanda with her first round of debt 2 years ago, and then again last summer. We've depleted a significant portion of our retirement savings, Dad added. We just can't do more without putting our own future at risk. The pieces were starting to come together, and I didn't like the picture they formed. Diana, Mom said, her voice taking on a persuasive tone I recognized from childhood when she was trying to convince me to go along with something I didn't want to do. You're in such a wonderful position now with your promotion. Your new salary is a blessing for the whole family. I felt my body go cold. My new salary is a result of my hard work and is for my future. Of course it is, Dad quickly agreed, but family is also about helping each other. Your sister is drowning in debt. The interest rates alone are crushing her. And we know you've always been so responsible with money, Mom added with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. You've always been the smart one, the planner. Amanda finally spoke up, her voice small but with an undercurrent of expectation. I know it's a lot to ask, Dee, but I don't know what else to do. The collection agencies call every day. My credit is ruined. I can't even get approved for a studio apartment without a co-signer. I looked around the room, from face to face, hoping I was misinterpreting their expectation. So, what exactly are you asking me to do? Dad straightened in his chair. Diana, since you're doing so well with your new promotion, we think you should pay off Amanda's debts. The bluntness of the statement hung in the air. Not help with or contribute to, but pay off. The entire amount. It would be a fresh start for her, Mom added quickly. A chance to rebuild without this cloud hanging over her. I struggled to find words. You want me to give Amanda $78,000? That's almost all of my savings. Money I've been putting aside for years for a down payment on my own place. It's not giving, Amanda corrected. It's more like a loan. A family loan. I'll pay you back eventually. Eventually? I repeated. Well, once I'm back on my feet. I'm looking at some really promising job opportunities right now. Before I could respond to that vague assurance, Dad dropped another bombshell. There's one more thing we need to discuss. Your mother and I aren't getting any younger, and as I mentioned, our retirement funds aren't what they should be after helping Amanda previously. Mom nodded solemnly. We sacrificed for both of you girls all our lives. We went without so you could have opportunities. We think it would be appropriate for you to help us rebuild our retirement fund as well, Dad continued. Perhaps a monthly contribution. Nothing too burdensome given your new salary. I felt like I had stepped into an alternate reality. Not only were they asking me to empty my savings to pay off Amanda's massive debt, but they also expected me to fund their retirement? All while Amanda contributed nothing? We're thinking perhaps $1,000 a month, Dad specified when I didn't immediately respond. Just until our accounts are back to where they should be. I did a quick mental calculation. At $1,000 a month, plus the $78,000 for Amanda's debt, they were effectively asking me to hand over more than $100,000 in the next 2 years alone. Money I had worked incredibly hard to earn and save. I don't know what to say. I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. Say yes. Amanda broke in with inappropriate enthusiasm. Oh, Dee, you'd be saving my life. I've been so stressed I can barely function. You're such a great sister for doing this. I knew you would help. I just knew it. Her presumption stung almost as much as the request itself. She was already thanking me as if my agreement was a foregone conclusion. Uncle Peter, who had remained silent throughout this extraordinary conversation, finally spoke. Perhaps Diana needs some time to think about this. It's a significant commitment. Mom shot him a look that could have frozen fire. Peter, we discussed this. Diana understands family responsibility. She knows this is the right thing to do. The way she said it, not as a request but as an expectation, made something shift inside me. I looked around at their faces again, seeing them with new clarity. This wasn't a discussion. It was an ambush carefully planned and executed to extract maximum financial benefit from my years of hard work and responsible choices. I need a minute, I said, standing up abruptly.
Excuse me.
I walked out of the living room on legs that felt disconnected from my body, ignoring the concerned murmurs behind me. I needed space, air, a moment to process the magnitude of what had just been asked of me, or rather, demanded of me. I found myself in my childhood bedroom, now converted to a home office, but still containing remnants of my youth, debate team trophies on a shelf, a framed honor roll certificate my parents never bothered to take down, a bulletin board with faded photos from high school. Sitting on the edge of the small futon that had replaced my bed, I tried to process what had just happened downstairs. My heart raced in my chest, and my hands trembled slightly as the full weight of my family's expectations pressed down on me. As I stared at a photo of my 16-year-old self, serious-eyed and already carrying the weight of excessive responsibility, memories flooded back, connections forming between past and present that I had tried for years to dismiss as isolated incidents rather than a pattern. I remembered my senior year of high school, sitting at the kitchen table with college brochures spread before me. I had been accepted to 5 universities, including my dream school, Cornell, but the financial reality was daunting. Mom, Dad, I had asked carefully, I know we've discussed that I need to pay for most of college myself, but could you help with the application fees? It's $80 for Cornell, and the others are between $50 and $75 each. My father had frowned over his newspaper. Diana, we've talked about responsibility. These fees should have been part of your planning. You've known college was coming. I've saved $3,200 for my cashier job, I had explained, but that's for tuition and books. I didn't calculate all these extra fees. Well, that's a life lesson then, he had replied. Always account for hidden costs. I ended up only applying to 3 schools instead of 5, paying the fees from my carefully saved tuition fund. 2 weeks later, my parents surprised Amanda with a used Volkswagen Beetle for her 16th birthday, a $5,000 purchase that apparently didn't strain their budget the way my $230 in application fees would have. The memory dissolved into another. My sophomore year of college. I was working 20 hours a week at the campus bookstore and another 15 at a coffee shop on weekends, while maintaining a 3.8 GPA. I came home for Thanksgiving break exhausted, with a persistent cold I couldn't shake because I couldn't afford to miss shifts. During dinner, Amanda excitedly shared stories about her high school experiences, including an upcoming spring break trip to Florida with friends. "How much is that costing?" I had asked, genuinely curious about current rates since I was considering a budget summer trip with roommates. "Oh, Mom and Dad are covering it," Amanda had said casually. "It's only like $1,200 for everything." When I looked at my parents in surprise, my mother had said, "Amanda works so hard in school. She deserves a nice break with her friends." I had bitten my tongue, not mentioning my 4.0 GPA that semester or the fact that I hadn't taken a day off in 3 months. Later, when I developed bronchitis from working through my illness, I put the antibiotics on my credit card because I was too embarrassed to ask for help after that conversation. Another memory surfaced, my college graduation. I had earned departmental honors and lined up a job starting the following month. My parents hosted a small backyard gathering, a few relatives, some neighborhood friends. The entire celebration cost perhaps $200 for some grocery store platters and a sheet cake. 6 months later, Amanda got her first job as a receptionist at a real estate office. My parents took her to dinner at Morton Steakhouse, a meal that easily cost $400, and presented her with a new laptop to celebrate this milestone. The memories continued to cascade. 3 years ago, my parents' roof developed a leak during a particularly harsh winter. Being between tenants for their rental property, they were concerned about the expense. "Diana, would you be able to help with the repairs?" my father had asked. "Just a small loan until the new tenants move in next month." The small loan turned out to be $3,800, which I provided from my emergency fund. Despite repeated gentle inquiries over the next year, the money was never repaid. When I finally asked directly, my father seemed surprised. "I thought we had agreed that was your contribution to family maintenance," he said. "After all, you'll inherit part of this house someday." Meanwhile, Amanda had been living rent-free in their investment property between tenants for nearly 4 months that same year, a benefit worth approximately $6,000 in market rent they could have collected. Last year, Amanda had wanted to join friends on a 2-week trip to Spain. When she couldn't afford it, she had asked me directly for a loan of $3,000. "I can't, Amanda. I'm saving for a down payment, and I have property taxes due next month," I had explained. She had immediately called our parents, and within an hour, my phone rang with my mother on the line. "Diana, why are you being so selfish? Your sister never asks you for anything. This trip is important for her network and connections." When I stood firm, I was labeled the selfish sister for weeks afterward. No one mentioned that I had helped my parents pay for a new water heater just 2 months earlier. Sitting there in my old room, these memories and dozens more aligned into an unmistakable pattern I had spent years trying not to see. My parents had always viewed my financial responsibility as a family resource to be tapped whenever needed, while Amanda's financial irresponsibility was treated as a family problem requiring collective solution. I felt my chest tighten as I recognized the truth. If I agreed to this current demand, it would never end. There would always be another crisis, another need, another expectation that I would sacrifice my security and future to support choices I had no part in making. I glanced at my watch. I had been upstairs for nearly 15 minutes. They would be getting impatient. I took several deep breaths, trying to calm my racing heart and organize my thoughts. The path forward was becoming clear, though the prospect of taking it filled me with both dread and a strange sense of liberation. Standing up, I caught my reflection in the small mirror hanging on the back of the door. I looked pale but resolute. For the first time in my adult life, I was about to prioritize my own well-being over my family's expectations. The thought was both terrifying and exhilarating. With one final deep breath, I opened the door and headed back downstairs to face my family, my mind made up and my boundaries, for once, firmly in place. When I returned to the living room, expectant faces turned toward me. My mother had made fresh coffee, and small dessert plates with additional tiramisu waited on the coffee table, another attempt to sweeten what they were asking of me. "I'm sorry for stepping away," I said, taking my seat again. My voice sounded different to my ears, calmer and more assured than I felt inside. I needed a moment to process everything. "Completely understandable," Dad said with a conciliatory smile. "It's a lot to take in." Amanda leaned forward eagerly. "So you'll help, right?" "I promise I'll be more responsible going forward." This is the wake-up call I needed. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not just my sister but a 27-year-old woman who had never faced the consequences of her choices. I looked at my parents and saw two people who, despite their good intentions, had created this situation through years of unbalanced expectations and support. "I've given this a lot of thought," I began carefully, "and I'm afraid I can't do what you're asking." The silence that followed was absolute. My mother's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. My father's body stiffened in his recliner. Amanda's mouth fell open slightly. Only Uncle Peter seemed unsurprised, watching the scene with what might have been the faintest hint of approval in his eyes. "What do you mean, you can't?" my mother finally asked, setting down her cup with a sharp clink against the saucer. "I mean that I'm not in a position to pay off Amanda's debts or contribute to your retirement fund." I kept my voice even and factual. "My savings are earmarked for my own future, a down payment on a home, my retirement planning, and my emergency fund. These are commitments I've made to myself after years of careful planning." "But you just got a big promotion," Amanda protested. "You're making six figures now." "My promotion doesn't change my financial goals or obligations," I explained. "Yes, I received a salary increase, but that doesn't translate to having $78,000 in disposable income. My new role comes with new responsibilities that I'm still adjusting to, and my financial planning accounts for my own needs and future." My father's face had begun to redden, a warning sign I recognized from childhood disagreements. "Diana, perhaps you don't understand the severity of the situation. Your sister is drowning in debt. Collection agencies are calling. Her credit is ruined." "I do understand the severity," I replied. "And I sympathize with Amanda's situation. But these are consequences of decisions she made." "So, you're just going to let your sister suffer?" My mother's voice rose with indignation. "After all we've done for you?" There it was, the guilt tactic that had worked so effectively throughout my life. This time, fortified by my recent realizations upstairs, I was prepared. "What exactly have you done for me that justifies an expectation that I'll give Amanda $78,000? I asked quietly. My mother recoiled as if I'd slapped her. "We raised you. We put a roof over your head, food on the table. We provided you with opportunities. Yes, you did the basic things parents should do," I acknowledged. "And I'm grateful for that. But beyond the basics, I put myself through college. I built my career without connections or financial support. I've worked for everything I have." "That's not fair," my father interjected. "We helped when we could." "Did you?" I challenged. "When I needed application fees for college, you told me to figure it out myself. When Amanda wanted a spring break trip to Florida her junior year of high school, you covered the $1,200 without hesitation." "That was different," Mom said dismissively.
How?
"How is it different?" "You were always so independent, so capable," she explained, as if this justified everything. "Amanda needs more support." "She needs more support because you've never required her to stand on her own," I said, the truth of this statement striking me fully as I spoke it. "You've cushioned every fall, solved every problem, paid off every debt. And now you're asking me to continue that pattern." Amanda's face had crumpled into a tearful expression that had always worked wonders on our parents. "I can't believe you're being so heartless. I'm in real trouble here, Diana." "I know you are," I said, softening my tone slightly. And I'm willing to help you find resources for financial counseling. I can help you create a budget and a debt repayment plan. I can connect you with contacts who might have job opportunities. But I can't and won't pay off your debts. Financial counseling won't stop the collection calls. Amanda's voice rose shrilly. I need money, not advice. What you need is to learn how to manage money, I countered. Otherwise, we'll be having this same conversation again in a few years. My father stood up, his patience clearly exhausted. Diana, this isn't a request. This is family responsibility. Your sister needs help that only you can provide right now. Dad, I understand you see it that way, but after all we've sacrificed for you, my mother interrupted, tears welling in her eyes. This is how you repay us? With selfishness. The word selfishness ignited something in me, years of suppressed frustration at being labeled selfish whenever I established a boundary. It's not selfish to protect my financial future, I said firmly. It would be irresponsible of me to empty my savings and take on additional monthly obligations that would compromise my security and goals. Family takes care of family, Dad insisted, his voice rising. That's how we raised you. Family should support each other's growth and independence, I countered. Not enable destructive patterns or make unreasonable demands. Uncle Peter finally spoke up. Robert, Margaret, perhaps Diana has a point about. Stay out of this, Peter, my mother snapped. This is between us and our daughters. Amanda, seeing that her tears weren't having the desired effect, switched tactics. Fine, if you won't help with all of it, what about half? Or even just $20,000 to pay off the highest interest cards? That's not addressing the real issue, I said. The issue isn't just the debt. It's the behavior that created it and will likely create more in the future. My father paced the room, his frustration evident in every movement. I can't believe what I'm hearing. We raised you better than this, Diana. You raised me to be responsible, I pointed out. I'm being responsible with my finances, just as you taught me. We raised you to care about family, my mother cried. To not be selfish and cold when others are suffering. The conversation was going in circles, with the same accusations being hurled at me from different angles. I realized we weren't going to reach an understanding. Not today, possibly not ever. Then my father said something that stopped me cold. This isn't how this was supposed to go, he muttered, more to my mother than to me. You said she'd agree once we explained the situation. My mother shot him a warning look, but it was too late. I'd caught the implication. You told them I would agree? I asked Amanda directly. Before this meeting even happened, you told them I would pay your debts? Amanda had the grace to look uncomfortable. I said you'd probably help because you're doing so well now. That's all. But something in her evasive glance told me there was more. I turned to Uncle Peter, whose presence suddenly made sense. Uncle Peter, why exactly are you here tonight? He shifted uncomfortably. Your parents asked me to come as moral support, I suppose. Moral support for what? No one answered, but their silence was revealing. You were here to help convince me, weren't you? I pressed, to add pressure if I resisted. That's not fair, my mother protested weakly. What's not fair is planning this ambush, I said, the pieces falling into place. This was never a discussion. You decided before I even arrived that I would be paying Amanda's debts and contributing to your retirement. My father's next words confirmed everything. Diana, we've already told Amanda you'll handle everything.
We can't go back on that now.
She's counting on this solution. The words hit me like physical blows. She'll pay everything, they had said about me, without my knowledge or consent. They had made promises on my behalf, allocated my money without my agreement, and expected me to simply fall in line with their decision. In that moment, something fundamental shifted in my relationship with my family. A lifetime of trying to earn approval through sacrifice and responsibility crystallized into the clear understanding that no sacrifice would ever be enough. There would always be another expectation, another demand, another assumption that my resources were family property while my needs were mine alone to manage. I see, I said quietly, a strange calm settling over me as the path forward became crystal clear. This meeting wasn't to ask for my help. It was to inform me of a decision you'd already made about my money. No one contradicted me. Their silence was confirmation enough. I stood up slowly, gathering my purse and phone from the side table. Four pairs of eyes watched me with expressions ranging from confusion to dawning alarm. "Diana, what are you doing?" my mother asked, her voice sharp with anxiety. "We haven't finished our discussion." "Yes, we have," I replied calmly. "There's nothing more to discuss." "You can't just leave," my father protested. "This is a family matter that needs resolution." "The resolution is that I won't be paying Amanda's debts or contributing to your retirement fund," I stated clearly. "That's my final decision." Amanda jumped up, panic replacing her earlier tearful manipulation. "Diana, please. You can't do this to me. I've already told the credit card companies I'd be making large payments next week. I promised them." "That was premature," I said, meeting her eyes steadily. "You made promises based on money that was never yours to allocate." "We're family," my mother said, her voice trembling between anger and desperation. "You can't just walk away from family obligations." I paused at that, considering my words carefully. I've never walked away from genuine family obligations. I've helped with house repairs, driven you to medical appointments, been available whenever there was a real need. But this isn't an obligation. It's an exploitation. "How dare you?" my father exploded. "After everything we've done." I cut him off with a raised hand. "I'm leaving now. I think we all need time to process this conversation. If you walk out that door without resolving this," my mother threatened, "you'll regret it." The old Diana would have faltered at that implicit threat, the suggestion that love and acceptance were conditional on compliance. But standing there, I realized I had nothing more to lose in this relationship. The unconditional love I had sought through decades of accommodating their unbalanced expectations had never truly existed. "I'm sorry you feel that way," I said sincerely. "I'm still willing to help Amanda with financial planning and job searching. My offer of support in those areas stands. But I won't be providing financial bailouts." "That's not enough," Amanda snapped, her earlier vulnerability replaced by entitlement. "I need money, not advice." "Then I can't help you," I said simply. I walked to the entryway, retrieved my jacket from the coat hook, and headed for the front door. Behind me, the protests grew louder. My mother calling my name, my father demanding I return to the living room, Amanda making a sound between a sob and a scream of frustration. Uncle Peter alone remained silent, watching the scene unfold with what looked like sad resignation. I opened the front door, stepped outside into the cool evening air, and closed it firmly behind me, cutting off the chorus of recriminations. The walk to my car felt surreal, as if I were moving through a dream. My hands trembled slightly as I unlocked the door and slid into the driver's seat. For a moment, I sat there, waiting for the crushing guilt to descend, the familiar weight that had always followed any act of self-assertion in my family. Instead, I felt a curious lightness, as if I had set down a burden I'd been carrying so long I'd forgotten it wasn't part of me. I started the engine and drove away from my childhood home, watching it recede in my rearview mirror until it disappeared around a bend in the road. Only then did tears begin to slide down my cheeks, not tears of regret, but of release. The days that followed my departure from my parents' house were a strange mixture of peace and turmoil. Externally, my life continued as normal. I went to work, managed my team, bought groceries, paid bills. Internally, I was processing a seismic shift in my understanding of my family relationships. The messages began the following morning. First came a text from my mother. "Your behavior last night was inexcusable. Your father and I are deeply disappointed. We raised you to have more compassion than this." Then from my father. "Diana, your sister is devastated. She was counting on your help. Family stands together in times of need. Call us when you're ready to discuss this reasonably." Amanda's message was less subtle. "Thanks for nothing. Collection agencies are calling every hour. Hope you're happy in your perfect little life while mine falls apart. I read each message, acknowledged the emotions behind them, and chose not to respond immediately. I needed time to process my own feelings without being pulled back into their narrative. By Wednesday, the communication strategy had evolved. My phone rang with calls from extended family members, Aunt Patricia expressing concern about the misunderstanding with my parents, Cousin Sarah wondering if I was doing okay after the family disagreement, Uncle Robert suggesting I reconsider my position for the sake of family harmony. It became clear that my parents had activated the family phone tree, presenting their version of events in which I was characterized as selfish and uncaring. Most conversations began with sympathy, but inevitably steered toward suggestions that I should find a compromise or do what I could to help Amanda. My apartment became my sanctuary, the one space where I wasn't confronted with expectations and guilt. I found myself looking forward to closing my door each evening, shutting out the world and the pressure it contained. Friday night, I invited my friend Rachel over for takeout and wine. After hesitating through appetizers, I finally shared the whole story. "Let me get this straight," Rachel said when I finished. "They ambushed you with a demand for $78,000 plus ongoing payments, acted like you had no choice, and are now shocked that you refused?" Hearing it summarized so succinctly made me laugh for the first time in days. "That's exactly it. Diana, you absolutely did the right thing," Rachel assured me. "If you had agreed, where would it end? Next year, it would be another debt, then another." "That's what I realized sitting in my old bedroom," I admitted. "This pattern has been in place my whole life. I just never saw it so clearly before." The following week, a coworker named Marcus overheard me taking a tense call from my mother in the break room. After I hung up, he hesitantly shared that he had gone through something similar with his brother. "Family financial dynamics are complicated," he said. "My brother expected bailouts for years. It wasn't until I stopped providing them that he finally got his act together. It was hard, but it was the right thing for both of us." His perspective, from someone who had been through the process and seen positive results, strengthened my resolve to maintain my boundaries. 3 weeks after the family meeting, I began seeing Dr. Lewis, a therapist specializing in family dynamics. In our first session, I poured out the entire story, still wrestling with doubt despite my conviction that I'd made the right choice. "What you're describing, Dr. Lewis said thoughtfully, has elements of financial abuse, using money as a means of control and manipulation, creating uneven expectations based on roles assigned within the family." Financial abuse. I repeated, the term both shocking and illuminating. "I never thought of it that way." "It may not be intentional on their part," she clarified. "These patterns often develop gradually and unconsciously, but the impact on you has been significant." Over several sessions, we explored the roots of these dynamics and developed strategies for maintaining healthy boundaries while processing the guilt and grief that accompanied my stand against long-established family patterns. Meanwhile, the pressure from my family intensified. Amanda's messages grew increasingly desperate, then hostile, then manipulative, cycling through these states sometimes within a single day. My parents employed every tactic that had worked in the past: appeals to family loyalty, reminders of childhood sacrifices, implications that my love was being measured by my willingness to provide financial support. 5 weeks after our confrontation, they delivered their ultimate leverage attempt. "Diana, if you can't support this family in its time of need, we'll need to reconsider our relationship going forward. Family means being there for each other, not just when it's convenient." The threat of family estrangement, implied but never before stated so explicitly, would once have sent me spiraling into compliance. Now, having had time to reflect on the true nature of our relationship, I recognized it as the control mechanism it was. After consulting with Dr. Lewis, I composed a brief, clear response: "I love you all and remain open to rebuilding our relationship on healthier terms. My boundaries around financial support remain firm. I hope we can find a way forward that respects everyone's autonomy and responsibility." Their response was silence, a silence that stretched from days into weeks. The family that had bombarded me with calls and messages suddenly went quiet, apparently implementing the threatened reconsideration of our relationship. The silence was painful, but also clarifying. It confirmed that my compliance had been a condition of acceptance, a price I was no longer willing to pay. 3 months passed with minimal contact from my family. My mother occasionally sent brief text updates about extended family or neighborhood happenings, but avoided any mention of our conflict or Amanda's situation. My father remained entirely silent. Amanda cycled between angry messages and plaintive appeals, eventually tapering off to sporadic check-ins that seemed designed to test whether my resolve had weakened. The first month was the hardest. I questioned my decision constantly, waking in the night with crushing guilt and doubt. Had I been too harsh, too absolute in my refusal? Should I have offered some smaller amount to help Amanda through the immediate crisis? Dr. Lewis helped me work through these questions, distinguishing between healthy guilt, which signals that we've violated our own values, and unhealthy guilt, which stems from others' expectations that we prioritize their needs above our own well-being. The fact that you're questioning yourself shows your compassion, she assured me. But ask yourself, if you had agreed to their demands, would it have solved the underlying issues or merely postponed the next crisis? Gradually, the fog of doubt began to lift. I recognized that my refusal wasn't just about protecting my savings. It was about disrupting a dysfunctional pattern that was harmful to everyone involved, including Amanda, whose dependence on bailouts prevented her from developing financial resilience. In my second month of therapy, Dr. Lewis suggested I join a support group for adults navigating difficult family relationships. There, I met others who had faced similar struggles, people who had set boundaries with parents, siblings, or extended family and weathered the resulting emotional storms. Listening to their stories provided perspective and validation. Clara had refused to continue funding her brother's serial business failures. Michael had declined to be the family retirement plan for parents who had spent rather than saved. Jennifer had stopped co-signing loans for a cousin with a history of default. None of these decisions had been made lightly, and all had resulted in family conflict. But many had eventually led to healthier relationships once the initial crisis passed and new patterns were established. With this support and ongoing therapy, I gradually found peace with my decision. The guilt receded, replaced by a growing sense of personal strength and clarity about my boundaries. I redirected the emotional energy previously consumed by family drama into self-care and personal growth. I joined a weekend hiking group, rediscovering my love of nature that had been set aside during years of work-focused existence. I enrolled in a photography class I'd been eyeing for years but had never made time for. I reconnected with college friends who had drifted to the periphery of my life while family obligations took center stage. At work, freed from the background stress of anticipating the next family financial crisis, I found new creative energy for my projects. My team noticed the difference, commenting on my increased presence and engagement. 6 months after the confrontation, I received exceptionally positive feedback in my performance review, with my director noting my enhanced leadership presence and strategic vision. My personal life blossomed as well. Through the hiking group, I met Benjamin, a landscape architect with a quiet confidence and strong sense of personal boundaries that I found both attractive and reassuring. Our relationship developed slowly and thoughtfully, with open communication about expectations and mutual respect for each other's independence. When I eventually shared my family situation with him, his response was supportive without being judgmental. "Families are complicated," he said simply. "Setting boundaries doesn't mean you don't love them. It means you're loving them in a healthier way." 8 months after the confrontation, I received an unexpected text from my mother. "Your father and I would like to have dinner with you next weekend, just to talk." After consulting with Dr. Lewis, I accepted with clear parameters: a restaurant rather than their home, a time limit of 2 hours, and an agreement that Amanda would not be present for this initial conversation. The dinner was awkward at first, with carefully neutral topics filling the silence: neighborhood news, the weather, my father's golf game. Eventually, my mother broached the subject we had all been avoiding. "We've missed you, Diana," she said quietly. "These months have been difficult." "I've missed you too," I replied honestly. But I needed this time to establish clarity about my boundaries. My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Your mother and I have been doing some thinking. Perhaps we expected too much from you." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was more acknowledgement than I had expected. "Amanda has been working with a credit counselor," my mother added. "She's consolidated some of her debt and found a job at an insurance office. It's entry level, but it's a start." "That's good to hear," I said, genuinely pleased. "How is she doing emotionally with all this?" "It's been hard," my father admitted, "but she's showing more responsibility than we expected." The conversation continued cautiously, testing new boundaries and interactions. We avoided detailed financial discussions, focusing instead on rebuilding basic communication. When we parted, my mother hugged me tightly, whispering, "We're trying to understand, Diana. It's not easy, but we're trying." Over the following months, we established a new, more measured relationship. I visited for occasional dinners, but maintained my separate life and financial independence. When financial topics arose, I redirected the conversation or established clear limits. If my parents or Amanda began to slide into old patterns of expectation, I calmly but firmly reset the boundaries. My relationship with Amanda remained the most complicated. During a coffee meeting 3 months after my initial reconciliation with our parents, she veered between resentment and grudging respect. "You know, at first I hated you for not helping me," she admitted. "I thought you were just being selfish and mean." "And now?" I asked carefully.
She sighed.
"Now I'm starting to see that maybe I needed to hit bottom. The credit counseling has actually helped. I'm learning stuff I should have known years ago. And having a regular paycheck feels, I don't know, stabilizing somehow." "I'm glad to hear that," I said sincerely. "Don't get me wrong," she added quickly. "It totally sucks having to budget every penny and watch my friends do things I can't afford. But I guess this is what being an adult actually is." Instead of offering money, I began sharing with Amanda the financial knowledge I had gained through years of self-education, how to create realistic budgets, the importance of emergency funds, strategies for debt reduction. To my surprise, she was receptive, even grateful for these practical tools. One evening over dinner at my apartment, she confessed, "You know what's weird? I think I respect you more now that you refuse to help me than I did when you were always the reliable one everyone could count on. Standing up to Mom and Dad took guts." Her insight touched me deeply. In refusing to participate in the family's financial dysfunction, I had inadvertently created space for a more authentic relationship with my sister, one based on mutual respect rather than caretaker and dependent roles. A year after walking out of my parents' house, I found myself reflecting on the journey while hiking with Benjamin in the Blue Hills outside Boston. We reached a viewpoint overlooking the city, and I stopped to take in the perspective, the distance making patterns visible that couldn't be seen up close. "You're quiet," Benjamin observed. "Everything okay?" "Yes," I said, realizing it was truly true. I was just thinking about how sometimes walking away is actually the most loving thing you can do, both for yourself and for the people you're leaving. "How so?" he asked. "When I left my parents' house that night, I thought I was breaking something irreparably. But what actually broke was a dysfunctional pattern that was hurting all of us. In its place, we're building something healthier, slowly and imperfectly, but real." That evening, I called my parents and had the most honest conversation we'd had in years. I expressed both my love for them and my non-negotiable boundaries. They listened without defensiveness, and while we didn't agree on everything, there was a new foundation of mutual respect that felt solid and promising. The path forward remains complex and sometimes challenging. Old patterns attempt to reassert themselves. New boundaries require consistent reinforcement. But with each passing month, our family dynamics shift incrementally toward healthier interactions. I no longer view family love as something that must be earned through sacrifice and compliance. True love, whether in families or other relationships, supports growth, respects boundaries, and wants the best for each person as an individual, not just as a resource for others. The most valuable lesson I've learned is that walking away isn't always an ending. Sometimes it's the necessary beginning of a healthier story, one where everyone has the opportunity to become their best selves rather than remain locked in destructive patterns of dependency and resentment. What about you? Have you ever had to walk away from a situation to protect your well-being? Did it lead to positive changes you didn't expect? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you found this story helpful, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's sometimes the most loving choice we can make. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, real love lifts you up. It doesn't drain you dry.